Welcome to Financial Garden Live, where we plant financial seeds every week so you can grow in our 6 areas of focus. Emotions and money, entrepreneurship, budgeting, banking, debt fundamentals, and investing. I'm your host, Tasha Danielle. Let's dig in. Hi everyone, welcome to Financial Garden Live. I have a very special guest with me today, Eddie Northington. Say what up to everybody, Eddie.
Hey everybody in TV land.
If you do not know who Eddie Northington is, he was a guest on Financial Garden Live last month talking about him and his wife's journey to real estate investing, but he is back today to talk about his venture in home healthcare. So Eddie is an entrepreneur and a family man who wanted to ensure that he left a legacy for his wife and children. Well, created a legacy for him and his wife and children by starting to invest in real estate and by starting a home health aid company. Him and his wife have several properties in Detroit and surrounding areas, and they got their start by purchasing a property from the Detroit Wayne County online tax auction. And Eddie's humble approach to entrepreneurship is, I'm not an expert, I just execute. I love that so much because you definitely execute and you are expert, because I call you all the time for random.
I'm like, dang man, I didn't know I had it like that. I didn't know. So I appreciate it.
No problem. As always, make sure that you all are dropping comments in the comment area. And before we get started, I want to remind everyone of Financial Garden's new initiative, 10K with Amina, and Financial Garden's mission to teach 10,000 kids before the end of the year, by December 31st, 2020, about entrepreneurship with Amina. So it's a great kids book that will teach your children about how to start a business and overall just how to reach a financial goal. So that's my plug for Amina's bracelets. You can get at financialgarden.com. You know how everybody like, we got to pay some bills. We going to pay this bill because we need Amina to go strong. So, all right. So let's just dig into your journey. You know, how did you get started with home healthcare?
Yeah. So I've always kind of been like a connector of people, right? And something that I really wanted to do. So it was people that like had property, but didn't really have, tenants weren't as faithful, like had a real bad experience with like regular tenants. And I had got a job with this one lady. I was actually picking up individuals to go to their dialysis appointments, right? And this lady, she like took a real good liking to me, like almost inappropriate, right? so I just used that. I capitalized. I said, well, look, since you sweating me, like, how did you? Because she was really doing well for herself, right? And I'm young. I'm like fresh out of high school, so I was like, how did you get all this established, right? And she was like, I usually don't tell people this for free, but I like you. She was a cougar. She was a cougar, okay? And she was telling me like everything. She was like, I usually charge for the information that I'm telling you, but I see how you care for my people, right? And I've always been, really big on helping people. So she kind of like gave me game, like some really good game. And at that point, I really didn't have any resources, but I knew people who had houses, and she kind of pointed me in the direction to make some connections with far as like agencies that look for housing for some of the individuals that they manage. So it was a friend of mine that had some houses. I said, hey, I've been talking to some guardianship agencies, and they're always looking for a placement, right? So end up talking like getting really cool with the people at the guardianship agencies and say like, hey, we have some housing available, et cetera, et cetera. And I talked to them, and they were like, "Okay, cool." And I ended up filling up like maybe it's like 5 or 6 houses, like just talking to the guardianship agencies,
Wow.
talking to people who have real estate, like, hey, make it look nice, make it look good, because these people are really sometimes emergency situations where they need housing. And they knew that I had a resource that they needed, and I was able to fill up houses, within a couple months or so. Like I think like 5 or 6 houses at this time, totaling about maybe 10 to 12 beds, I believe. So
Okay,
like
so let's back up, because you went from you met someone who was in the industry, and they kind of told you about how to get into what sounds like a group home, right? If you
yeah.
have a property, you can call an agency to fill up however many beds you have. Did you have to do any, starting with the group home part? Did you have to be the homeowner to do this? Did you have to have any certifications? Like, what was that process like?
So the houses that I was doing, because I was fresh in it, these were all non-licensed homes. You don't need a license to run an assisted living. So basically what it was, I didn't even own these houses. I just knew people that owned them, right? But I knew eventually like I would get to that point, but I didn't have like real estate at the time, right? So, but I still wanted those connections. And so what I did, I just put the right people in place. Didn't need a license. At this point, you just need a home somewhere nice and cozy for some disadvantaged people to live in.
And you contact the agency. You contact the agency to get these people, right?
Yeah, so I contacted the guardianship agency. That was like my first kind of like connect was guardianship agency. So
Okay.
I will call like each and every person that worked in the office. Like I will find the directory and I will call them and just introduce myself and say, hey, we have this home on the west side, east side, or whatever the address, and I would send them pictures of the place. So they, wouldn't have to like waste time coming out and see. I would send them pictures and say like, hey, this is what we got going. And again, I didn't own these houses. I just knew people that had housing that needed to utilize the property because it was just sitting. And we all know properties can't sit too long in the city and nothing be in there because it would get gutted, right? So,
okay.
And, kind of just help them kind of, occupy their property and have a place to house some disadvantaged people. So
I love talking numbers.
Yeah.
So when you're saying that you call the agency, this is this group home. This is not home health care just yet, but how you got to home health care was your beginning of it. So what was the financial part of it? So you call the agency, they place these people, is the agency paying the homeowner monthly? And you want to give an example of how much a person is being paid to do this?
Yeah. So again, I was young and very naive. Okay.
Okay.
So I had it set up to where their rent payment was going straight to the homeowner, right? Because I just, in good faith, hey, I'm gonna get you together, and then just get me together later, right?
Oh,
no. Right. So, and how they pay at this point, it was just their Social Security, right? So some of these people were, alcoholics, strung out on certain drugs, like really like disadvantaged people, like really, just had the system kind of just thrown out and never really stable, right? So that was like the only population of people that I had access to at that time. But they will cut their rent payment straight to the homeowner. So the homeowner would get an LLC, whatever house, and the guardianship agency will make sure that when the check was cut, that it will go to the homeowner, right? Okay. So that was kind of like my first mistake because I had no access, to the funds, right? Because again, good faith, we talked about it. This was going to be, the situation. And, stuff didn't work out like I had planned, but yeah, so they will cut the check, the guardianship agency. So you don't really have to depend on the person to do that for you. The guardians do that for them because you can run in a situation where you possibly won't get paid because they go out and do other things with their money.
So the guardianship agency is how to fund it, and they go directly to whoever the homeowner is or whoever set up the LLC to say, "Hey, we're doing this."
Right. So yes, whoever you tell them, whoever the money is going to. So if it's an LLC, if it's another company, like anything, the guardianship. Hey, who am I paying for my person that I am the guardian of to make sure that they have a roof over their head, shelter, food, et cetera, et cetera. So
Okay.
whoever you tell them, they send it.
So if you're just joining us right now, Eddie's giving us background on how he got into home health care by having a group home. Well, he was kind of like a liaison to a group home and filling properties, nice properties with disadvantaged people and getting payment from guardianship agencies. So I'm glad you shared your mistakes and being a liaison. So once you realize that, you're like, okay, let me do this on my own. So let's talk about how you ended up having your own group home that eventually led to you get into home health.
Yeah, so I definitely had to pivot because once I got like all the houses were pretty much full at capacity, and I'm like, hey, it's payday, what's up, and it was not the desired response. Okay. So I said, well, what I have to do is that I have to pivot now, right? So what I did is like I don't have the real estate, but I have the connection. So what we did, instead of depending on the real estate to take care of people, I said, well, now I need to set up to where we can just send out the help to people who have their own homes. So now that kind of takes some of the overhead off of me because I don't have the overhead of owning the house and, paying the bills and all that stuff. So let me just send out the help. So let me just set up an agency to where they'll just pay me to provide a service and not necessarily the home, the real estate, the room and board.
Okay, so let's kind of take a pause there too. So you were kind of shortchanging yourself saying you were liaison. So when you were helping fill the homes with the guardianship agencies, so you had staff, like you were hiring people to do this. It sounds like you had a team.
Yeah. So at this particular point, because it's not a whole lot of money, like especially this angle that I was, learning about. So a lot of the homeowners were involved in actually helping the people at the home. And the good things, like these people weren't like really, they didn't need a lot of help, but they needed more so supervision, right? So it wasn't as extensive as, with toileting and feeding tubes or catheters or anything like that, right? So it was just basically supervision, make sure that, they have some food in there, that you cook a meal here and there, and to just make sure that they're doing okay, that their well-being is okay, right? So,
and this was what you're talking about as far as having a group home?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And these were non-licensed at the time. I didn't know anything about like getting houses licensed and government agencies. This was way before that. So once I pivoted, learned some hefty mistakes, like, just make sure that you're in control of the revenue, because if the opportunity is there for you to get undercompensated, you're gonna get undercompensated, right? So that was the case. And I mean, lesson learned. I mean, what I did, it helped a lot of people. It really changed some people's financial situation. And when you get used to a certain lifestyle or a certain amount of money that you really didn't experience, especially like kind of working for yourself, people get selfish. Like, man, like I've been waiting my whole life to have an opportunity like this, So we had to pivot, and that's when we started my home healthcare company, Faithful Hands. And another really good friend of mine, her name is Renee. She helped me out a whole lot as far as giving me game on how to establish a home health agency, right? So she gave me the information on how to get connected with Medicaid, their insurance, to get paid to do, ADLs. Those are activities of daily living. right? So she put me up on game on how you can get Medicaid, state insurance to pay a company to come in and assist people to do, little basic, everyday life things.
So, okay, so before you pivoted with the staff, how many people did you have that were helping that you hired for the group home?
So for the group homes, or when I started the agency?
When you were saying you were doing a pivot, so how many people did you know you were going to be able to pivot to be able to launch the home health?
It was me and my wife.
Okay, you and your wife. So
just us starting off.
Okay, so you said you start researching, you realize like Medicaid can pay if you pay home health aid companies, right?
Yep.
So you and your wife start the home. What is the name of your I think you just mentioned it.
Yeah, Faithful Hands.
Okay, and so you guys did the research, figure out what was required. So I know you briefly. Can you kind of restate what's required when you guys were doing your research to be actually paid by Medicaid?
Yeah, so you definitely gotta have insurance, man. So the thing is, never do anything without insurance. By the grace of God, we never had to file a claim, like somebody getting hurt on the job, But you definitely need to have insurance, right? And Medicaid, they'll line out everything you need. So you'll need your insurance information, how many staff you have, just a plan, job description, the type of services you're willing to provide. Medicaid is really good on telling you exactly what you need to do. And you just go through it line by line. Okay, get this, get that, get that. So we got insurance. It was fairly cheap because it was just me and my wife at the time, right? And I knew that starting off, we were going to have to do the majority of the work, because what we did was that we worked as much as we possibly can, not to spend money and ball out. It was just to raise capital, right? So when we got to the point where we can hire staff, so we worked a lot of cases ourselves, right? Not to spend it and to just raise some capital.
So you mentioned what it requires to be licensed. So obviously, before you go into the home, I know you mentioned about what Medicaid requirements were. Did you have to go through any training? Did you or your wife have any background in healthcare at all?
Yeah, so my wife had all the experience, because out of high school she worked for Henry Ford in the billing department, and then before she got that job, she did a lot of private duty direct care work. So she had all the experience. So she kind of guided me as far as the execution, and I was the people person. So I was able to talk to the right people, make the connections, and kind of get us in the door. And once we were in the door, she was able to manage what I was able to get from talking and dealing with the people. So she had all the experience and she taught me. And you don't need a degree. A lot of stuff you can do online. So there's some state guidelines that you can go to a website and get the required training that you need and be good to go to provide services to people. So it's not a whole lot. Yeah.
And this is services to be a home health aid professional. So you and your wife researched how to get payment from Medicaid and all that stuff. You filed your paperwork, LLC, all that stuff. You mentioned insurance, having that. Just kind of recapping the steps. Fortunately, your wife definitely helped out a lot because she had a strong background in healthcare. So and understanding billing and all of that stuff. So you mentioned that you and your wife were just thugging it out. You guys were working the caseloads at first so you guys could raise capital.
Yeah.
So you and your wife did the certificate, the online trainings that you just spoke of before getting started. So I'm glad you mentioned it's no degree or no trade school required to be a home health aid professional.
Nope.
You just need to do the state training that you mentioned. So how long did you guys thug it out doing all these cases? And definitely, if you have comments and questions, drop them for us.
Yeah. So we thugged it out, man, for at least a year. At least a year. Yeah, at least a year. And then the thing is, it was just learning from the business aspect. what the how to deal with the relationship with the guardian, with the person you're servicing, with the doctors and other medical professionals that's attached to this person that you're caring for, right? Because this is an industry, it is people driven. Like you have to know how to deal and talk to people, because you can say the wrong things, say the wrong tone, and a person can hold you up for 2-3 months of nothing, right? So and then when we first started, when it was just us too, because we wanted to see exactly how much it would be, how much it would actually cost. So I think our insurance policy, man, was like maybe our down payment was maybe $1,000, if that, but it was just us. And we kind of like over insured ourselves, right? So we kind of went over what we were actually doing just to kind of give us a cushion for when we did grow. So it wasn't such a crazy increase in insurance. So we maybe got the insurance policy for maybe, $1,000, maybe 1,200 for the insurance, right? And then from there, that was it. The insurance was the most expensive thing. And then from there, we just thugged it out and work, and put up the capital to where we were able to hire people and pay them and train them efficiently and the correct way on how to deal with people. And because it's not just the person you're caring for, it's their whole network of people that's attached. So a lot of these people have underlying conditions. So they have doctors, they have nurses, they have social workers, they have physical therapists, they have advocates. They have so many people attached to them. So how you deal with them, how you conduct yourself, well, it would allow your business to grow, because they say, oh man, you're taking really good care of this person. I know another one of my cousin or whatever. I have another client who, I would love for your services, to be with them too. So the better you do, like the business will come. Like word of mouth is the best in healthcare.
How did you get your first client?
I printed out a bunch of flyers, right? And I went to, it was I think it was some agency. I think it was the adult something agency. It was like I forgot the name of this agency, man. But it was an agency.
Went to an agency.
Yeah, it was an agency. So I went to like dozens and dozens and dozens of meetings, right? I'm talking about group homes. I went to guardianship agencies. I went to state agencies, just dropping off flyers, getting contact information, and being charmingly persistent. Not a pet. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a fine line between being a pest and being charmingly persistent, right? You may have to send some lunch up to an office one day. You may have to, get some flowers, some cookies, some coffee, just to make a name. Like, oh man, like I remember he, got us cookies today. He's trying to grow his business. So you definitely have to hustle. And that's what we did. We put our feelers everywhere. We just cast our net everywhere. And we're just like, it takes one call. It takes one call.
So listen, I love this story because y'all put feet to the pavement and we're just like foot traffic, passing out the flyers and, going above and beyond, cookies, lunch, whatever, so people can remember who you are and your business. Did you guys do anything on social media as far as advertising or taking out any ads or anything like that?
None of that.
Okay.
We did none of that.
How, it's another approach. It doesn't always have to be digital and virtual or anything like that.
Yeah, no, like a personal, because everybody's doing it. Like when you have a personal touch, when like somebody has something tangible to remember you by, like getting coffee is so more impactful than scrolling through, your social media and seeing a flyer for an ad that you've seen 1,000 times. But if I see this logo and I can connect it to that coffee that he got us that day, oh man, like let me give them a call. So it's all about personal touches in healthcare, because like it's dozens and dozens and hundreds, thousands of healthcare agencies, but you have to do something to make you stand out, right? And that's what I did. Like I went up and talked to these people and batted eyelashes.
Thank you so much, Janelle, for the love. congratulating you and just telling the story and telling us it's a great topic. Yeah, because I'm gonna touch on the silver tsunami in a second on why this is so
Right.
it's such an important topic. But for people who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs, trying to figure out like, oh, I always had a passion for working in healthcare, don't know
Yep.
how to get started in maybe working for myself. This may be a good avenue for you. Now, I'm liking that Eddie is keeping it real with his journey. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just gonna start a home healthcare company and do a little simple training online and I'm gonna go about my way. No, him and his wife did research, figured out what was required from the state, and
Yeah.
insurance, just went about everything the right way. And then just this footwork to get the first client. So how long did you guys pound the pavement and do all of this before you got your first client?
I say about in 3 months we got like our first client.
That's great. So I know it seems like it was a long much longer than that when it was when it was real life when y'all was doing this.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been longer, but like every day I was doing something far as like get a client, like something. Like if I wasn't calling people, I was doing my research, like because there's different populations that you can service too. So you have, Social Security recipients, you have the Alzheimer's population, you have the mentally ill population, you have the developmentally disabled population, you just have just the elderly, just people that are getting old, they can't do the everyday thing. So there's such diversity in home healthcare. You can kind of pinpoint and market exactly the type of people you want to deal with. So, and that's how you need to do. And the thing is, in my personal experience, it didn't take a lot of money at all. Like I think the most we spent, man, was the insurance policy, and that was like a little over a grand. Honestly, it might have been like right below, but I saved the most like $1,200, right, just to get insurance.
So when you
Right.
think about the training that you had to take, the insurance, the flyers, the cookies, and all of that, what would you, if you had to just guesstimate it, how much money did you actually spend to get that first client?
I would say with the cookies and buying clothes, look presentable at meetings and flyers, I would say, man, 2 to 3 thousand, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe. I'm just because like I don't want it. I'd rather like inflate it and then you just be like pleasantly surprised, right? So I would never undersell it, but I would say like maybe 3 grand, right? And that was because we did a lot of the work. We didn't hire a lot of people. So that's what kept a lot of our overhead down because we didn't hire a marketer. We were the marketers. We didn't, staff people to go to meetings. We didn't do that. We did everything ourselves just for the fact that we don't have to spend so much money because we didn't have it. We didn't have money. We didn't have, money to pay people at that time.
Okay, so Tanya Phillips is saying the real deal. Danielle, are we good now? Oh, she said it's clear now. Okay, good. Thank you for letting us know we're freezing. I just love this story because people think entrepreneurship is, you can only go one lane now. Everyone's online. It's like it has to be online, but I like this story. So you said the money that you spent, right, to
Yeah.
get started in the business and everything. How would you, when you guys started growing, right?
Yeah.
Finding employees. How did you find employees to work for you?
First, like just like every like entrepreneur, like you hit up your people first, right? So you hit up your people, you hit up family and friends to try to like, hey, I'm trying to do something, like work with me, right? So that would take you so far. It would take you so far because you have to be very careful, right? Because depending on how things go, you can tarnish some relationships, right? So once we got over the friends and family, that's like basic entrepreneur one-on-one you really shouldn't do, but we reached out to family and friends, right? And then once we learned from not to kind of do that, you know what I'm saying? Then we went to like basic resources like Indeed, Michigan Works. Michigan Works was really clutch, right? Because I used to be unemployed, right? So I hit it off really cool with a lady when I was up there looking for employment. And it's crazy because I remember that I went into her looking for a job, and I went back years later setting up a job fair. And she actually wrote an article like from unemployed to employer, right? It was really
that's goals right there.
it was crazy. It was crazy. She was like, wow, like, I want to write an article about you, because I was in her office like scraping for a job at one point. And I came back to her years later, like, hey, I want to set up a job fair. So we use Michigan Works and Indeed, and we got resumes. We called people, and look, we didn't have an office. We doing everything at our house. So we did over the phone interviews, right? And then, we asked them like, how much experience you had looking at resumes. And if they sounded good, we met them. Like, look, meet us at Tim Hortons, for orientation. Like that's what we did.
Real grassroots out here.
Dude, that's what we did. Like, meet us at, Tim Hortons, and we talked to people, did over the phone interviews. And one thing I can say, we had some really dope people.
Did you do any background checks and stuff like that?
That is definitely a requirement. Like, super do that. Like, do not do a background check.
What certification do you require for your employees?
So everything is state regulated. So one, depending on if they're going to be driving, valid driver's license, and insurance, and with a lot of the resources, you can get them free. The main thing is CPR and first aid, and that's actually like the main one, CPR and first aid, and everything else you can do online. And even if they don't have that, there's resources that you can get them plugged into to get it. But the main thing is definitely background checks and first aid and CPR.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Toy, thank you so much. This is blessing my soul right now. I know.
Hey, Toy. I know Toy. Toy is family. What's up, Toy?
All right, so this story is like I said, every time I talk to you, I'm like, dang, I want to do this now. I'm like, focus on one thing, Tasha. So
man, it's not for everybody though.
Oh yeah, so we're gonna get to that in a minute, because I was like, for me, it's just like, I said that because I know personally, I was a legal guardian of my grandmother before she passed away, and just going through the struggle of looking for a nursing home and then figuring out this nursing home is trash. Even though they have great reviews online, you walk in there and it just smelled like, you know what? And it's just like, you don't know. And then, so that's what I'm saying from my experience. I'm like, going through that journey for my grandmother, I'm like, in the back of my mind, like, this is something that I may want to look into in the future. I have family members that are home health aides right now. And I'm like, this could be a business venture for us. Never know, but in the future. So this is why I connect so much with this story that you're telling. And I know that you have such a good heart, and you're not just doing this for the money. You're making sure that people are, being taken care of. That's why I want to walk through the story of, finding employees. You know what I mean? You doing background checks, you doing interviews. So if this is blessing you, make sure you're sharing this video. Make sure you tag people that you know should be watching this video. If you're watching from Facebook, tag them in the comments, section, so we can get this out to as many people who can really, this can bless them and really move them towards, maybe starting their own home health aid company. All right, so you find the employees, you interview them, orientation at Tim Hortons. There you go. So let's just fast forward into current state. Like, how many employees do you have now, you and your wife?
We have 11 employees.
Wow. That's so great. And you and your wife are managing this, trying to make sure people are out. How hard is it to manage 11 employees?
You have to know how to deal with people, right? So you have to lead, you have to be a leader and not a boss, right? So once you're a leader and like you really care about your people, your team, because without them, like, you would just own a job. You see what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like you will just own a job, right? It's like you have to take care of your people, man. And the thing is, just make it easy for them to follow instruction, right? Just so we communicate. So like one of our strengths, I mean, we're fairly small, compared to others, but our size becomes a strength because we can connect and communicate with our team of people, like personally. Like, look, we need A, B, and C done. This, you need to do A, B, and C, X, Y, and Z. So we can like deal with them almost like face to face. And when your employer is kind of like really dealing with you and respecting you, they're motivated to be like, dang, like they're good people to work for, right? So even during this pandemic, we had one person quit because she was like our newest employee, right? And based the relationship that we have with our people, they didn't want to quit and get all that unemployment money. Like they respected us so much that they stayed working as opposed to getting unemployment and getting paid more than what I'm able to pay. So and that says a lot in our leadership, because they rather stay working with, and then too, because we are like still involved, we work side by them. So it's not like no ivory tower type thing. We're not, in the office just barking orders. We in there, passing medication and dealing with stuff just like you are, right? So we're on the front lines together. And I think that it's a lot of respect that they have for us because we're right there doing the same things that they're doing, right? So but yeah, they held us down, still working, and we just make, the requirements. We give them, hey, this is what you need to have done before this time. They do it, make everything nice and simple and streamline everything, right? Because the thing is, you have to hire these people and you have to develop these people because they can be at jobs that they learn bad habits from. And instead of condemning people, criticizing, like, look, you should do it like this, and learn how to talk to people, man. It's all about how you deal with people. This is a people driven, one word I'm looking for, industry, right? So you have to deal with people. If you take care of people, they would take care of you.
That's true. That's gems for anyone, whether you're in home health care or whatever. If you are an entrepreneur, you are a manager in a corporation, manager at McDonald's, like that leadership quality and leading people and treating them with respect is so key.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the silver tsunami. So you had told me about this. I was like, what's the silver tsunami and what that means for this industry as a whole?
Yeah, so there's going to be such a need for housing, right? Because people would rather their loved ones be in a home as opposed to an institution, if that makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the silver tsunami is just a lot of people becoming seniors, a lot of people just getting older, and there's going to be such a need for, retirement housing and assisted living because a lot of people are getting older, So the silver tsunami is just this influx of seniors that are going to transition from, being as independent to needing some help, right? And that's where you kind of have to scale, your game up, right? Because a lot of these people, they're not going to be comfortable with, let's say being in a little house on the west side. You see what I'm saying? So now this where you have to really like go out into nicer areas, because the nicer the area, the more you can charge, for this house. And that's when licensing comes in. Okay. Like we had got a house license, and it is a process. Like if you want to like step your game up, a license is not required, but it just opens you up to better opportunities, right? Not saying there aren't good opportunities in non-licensed settings, but there are good opportunities in licensed settings, right? Because you have the assurance of the person who's placing their loved one, right? Because even if you get some work done, a plumber, are you licensed? No, I'm gonna call somebody else who got a license, depending on the type of work you're trying to get. But you just have the reassurance that this person has a license, they're governed by some type of agency above them, and it gives people a peace of mind. So, but it's just going to be an influx of housing and care that's needed because a lot of people are getting older, and that's what this silver tsunami is.
The baby boomers in particular are
Yes.
is the group that is retiring. So like statistics show on the like Bureau of Labor Statistics that the home healthcare industry by itself is going to rise by 36% by 2028, and that's before even we get to 2030, where they're really expecting
exactly.
Effect. It's not like you mentioned housing. It's not just from the home health aid perspective. Real estate they're predicting there's going to be just so much more real estate available because baby boomers are leaving their homes, going to assisted living. There's not enough assisted living or nursing home facilities to accommodate baby boomers. So then what do you have? You're going to need home health. So home health aid companies to provide staffing. So that's something I didn't even think about until you had told me about the silver tsunami. So I also read that the elderly tend to live longer when they stay in their home.
Yes.
Versus
because like
going to the facility.
Yeah, because it's just the emotional aspect to life, right? And because you develop if you're in this house your entire life, you have an emotional connection to that house, right? And the thing is that when you move, you kind of lose that connection, and you kind of lose kind of like that comfort, that peace of mind, and then you're going into this foreign facility, and it does a number on an elderly person's mental health, right? And especially you're dealing with strangers. And look, we all know everybody that work in that industry ain't angels, right? So, they can be in a mess up situation, and, the staff is terrible and they just have a horrible experience, and it wears on their mental health, and their overall physical health goes down, as opposed to staying at home when, they have family that can overlook the staff, when they, hire your company, and they just have that reassurance and that connection there. And there's a lot less overhead dealing with a person's personal home as opposed to a facility with hundreds of beds, hundreds of units, and that's another thing. Like, it is strength in being smaller and running smaller operations. And two, the smaller you are, the less stipulations you need, right? So when you get to more beds, you're going to need sprinkler systems and all this other, extra credit because of how big the facility is. So that's why people are shifting to just modifying personal homes and making then too, even if they have to move from their personal home, if they go to another home-like setting, it's still easier on their mental health, and they feel comfortable because it's like more of a family setting than a facility setting. And that does a number on the mental state.
Now, I do have, just backing up, we got a couple comments. Toy said, power couple. Yeah, Eddie and his wife are a power couple. Like, they buying real estate for managing properties, and then home health care. Y'all are the power couple, for real.
We trying, man. We trying. We trying. We are trying.
What made you and your wife not decide to franchise? Because I know there are home health care, home health aid companies that you can actually franchise through. Did you ever consider that?
We did. Actually, it was a friend of mine that was doing it. And the company was pretty much like inherited to him. And he didn't know, at least, to my understanding, he didn't know too much of the ins and outs of it, because that was a plan. We were going to franchise off of his company, but things kind of went left and we weren't able to do it, so we had to do it from scratch, right? And then the thing is, I didn't want to pay that franchise fee, because we could have franchised somebody else, but then there's all the franchise fee, and then we didn't know enough to start a franchise. So the first couple of years was just learning. Even now, we're still learning. So we thought about it. The opportunity was there with a friend of mine, but it kind of fell through. So, but we did talk about it, because we actually think about how can we franchise ours, because we're in the process of really,
having somebody
run it, and when we just go in and just focus on like mainly on real estate and other ventures. So
look, that's why Toy said y'all a power couple, because that goes right there. Franchise.
yeah, it's in the cards, man. It's in the cards. But yeah, so and then the thing, like, it's easy too, because I know a lot of caregivers that like work in it, and they have all the knowledge, all the know-how. Some of these managers know so much they can start their own home tomorrow, but they get so comfortable, right? Like, comfort will kill greatness.
Say that again.
Dude, comfort will kill greatness, man, because you'll be so worried about being comfortable that it robs you of time you could have spent being great, right? And people say like, oh man, like I don't do a lot, my clients, they cool, I do the midnight shift, I'm just chilling. I mean, that's great, that's cute, right? But the thing is, what if that client passes? Yeah. Now your revenue, your livelihood is attached to a person that's not aging backwards. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're getting older. So like now your whole livelihood is attached to an aging adult. You see what I'm saying? And when that's gone, your job can be gone. So all the time, you being comfortable, you can be like making, moves and doing your own thing, right? Because there's a lot of managers that know everything. They can start their own business tomorrow. They're like, oh, I don't want to deal with all that. But you go deal with something you don't want to deal with anyway. And my thing was, I'd rather deal with the problems up here than down there.
Yeah, that's true. And I know being a business owner is not for everyone, because like the whole employee, having processes in place, being liable for stuff, it can be a lot, but it's a way to pivot that too. How to be a consultant for a company that's just starting up, like like you and your wife, if you guys pay somebody $1,000 to save you 100 hours of time, that's priceless. Yeah. So you mentioned like $2,000 to $3,000 to start up. That wasn't including the sweat equity, the hours, that you put into this. So that's another thing too. People don't think about consulting, like freelance consulting, your expertise. That's what I always tell people when they're talking about getting out of debt. I'm like, what is your expertise? I don't have it. You have something. What do you do on a day-to-day? What do people come to you for? So yeah, I'm glad that you said that. So I'm seeing people joining in on it. So make sure you are sharing this live, dropping some hearts if you are on Facebook Live for us in the comment section. So we talked about the silver tsunami, and you do not want to, decided not to franchise. What are some things that you wish you would have known before going into this industry? Like some things you just missed. Like, give me one or two.
One, that you're not going to get paid for a long time. You're not going to get paid for a long time, depending on how you steward your money. Okay, we didn't pay ourselves for at least a year. Okay, like, again, we were just raising capital because we knew like the more we paid ourselves, the more we're going to have to own the job, right? And diversity. The reason I say diversity, because even recently, like as of like a few days ago, I had a potential client say, we don't want a Black company.
What?
Oh yeah, it gets real. Like, we need to get to that. Like, it gets really real. So
I would like to let you finish because I got some thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's crazy. So like, I would have did differently. Like, we went to a family that didn't look like us, right? Mm-hmm. Just to kind of, because it basically, it's shooting dice now, right? You don't know what you're going into. So I would have did differently to have somebody that represented each family that you'll encounter. Because there have been times we have went in to meet families and we didn't look the part. And, they let you know. They will let you know subtly or, point blank, so you can be, I call it BWAB, BWAB, Black with a business. So you become a target. Go ahead. Yeah, you need diversity because you don't know what you're walking into. Your intentions can be pure as gold, But that family may have a particular preference, and that's on them, whatever. But you will encounter situations like that to where they want people in their house, because you got to understand, depending on the situation, you can be 24-hour, round the clock care. They're going to have a stranger essentially in their home 24 hours a day. And certain people feel safer with somebody that looks like them in their house, going, using their bathroom and they eating lunch in their living room, as opposed to other people. So you have to diversify and be able that you can represent each population.
Now, so I have a few comments about that. So, first thing is the demographics on it. So looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, like 60% of the home health aid workers are women. I couldn't find a pure stat on ethnicity or race, but from like just reading different headlines or whatever, when you Google home health care, you look it up on YouTube, most in-home health care aid workers are minority workers or Black. So was it that they weren't comfortable with you guys being the owners of it, or they want, like you mentioned before, they want someone in their home looking like them? Which one do you think?
We've experienced everything. We've experienced them looking at us being young and Black. We have been told that, like, what they know, they're children, and we've encountered people like, do you have white staff? Like, just straight up. And they have that right. Like, it's their home, it's their personal stuff, like, it's your prerogative. You know what I'm saying? That's you, but you will get to that. Like, you will get to a place where you go in and they don't want your services because of how you look. And you have to have a contingency plan to offset that, right? Because more so, especially when private duty, you have a lot of these high-end, like out in West Bloomfield and all that stuff, you go in this baby mansion and look, I ain't gotta say, you already know, right? So they like, I'm not saying yeah, like it gets real. Like, it gets really real and people get so much more vocal because their person, and which is warranted, their loved one's health and safety is at stake, right? And they want, somebody that they can trust. But usually, you get fired at the door, so yeah, it get real, man. It's a different side to this stuff.
Alrighty. So I want to leave it for any questions before I close out with one of my final questions. And definitely make sure, as we're wrapping up, tag people, like I said, that need to hear that you heard people are talking about possibly starting a home healthcare company, because this is really great information and a lot of free gems that Eddie has dropped throughout this whole episode. So one of my closing questions is how do you measure success in your business?
I definitely measure success on how the people we service feel, right? Because if you're not careful, man, this can become a cash grab for people, right? And we measure our success on how the people that are involved are taken care of. Not just, the clients, not just the individual service, but our staff, our team. Like, do you feel like you're cared for? Do you feel like we have your best interest at heart? Do you feel like we're involved? So I measure success on how the staff feels about us and how the guardians send us letters and gives us praise on how we're taking really good care of their people. We get a lot of like rough cases. And what I mean by that, like severe mental illness, where a lot of people don't want to deal with, that we kind of like stuck in there and like, look, they just want some love, because they come from houses to where people don't really care about them. They care about the paycheck, right? And it reflects on how people are treated. And when people come in, they come in with a lot of baggage. And you have to kind of reprogram and recondition people that people actually care for them. So people like they will come in thinking that you're going to be just like everybody else, and they will test you on purpose just to see where you're at. Do you really care about them, right? And you have to love people. Like if you're not about changing people's like lives, their livelihood, and making an impact on people, like don't do this because it can get dangerous when you're just in it for money, right? So you have to care about people's well-beings, about people, about their quality of life changing based off how you take care of them. So that's how we measure success. So we get, praise and people rant and rave about us all the time. So yeah, that's how we measure our success. People are changed, people are impacted, and people know that we actually care about them.
I love it. So if we don't have any additional questions coming through that people who are interested in this industry, yes, takes patience and discernment. Yes, yes, yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Yes.
If that's it, you can find Eddie on Facebook at the Northingtons. Anything else? Any closing words before we sign off, Eddie?
Get my financial garden email together.
Eddie is going to be a financial guard instructor. He and I are working on some things, so you will be seeing a lot more of Eddie. He will be popping on as a co-host with me, and he will be teaching the kiddos. If you don't know, Financial Guardian is a financial education company, so we do the lives for you, and we also educate children, kindergarten through 12, and provide professional development to educators. I am Tasha Danielle, and I am signing off. Bye, everybody.
Peace.